Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today, as you can see, it's going to be Batman Returns for the Sega CD. This is a game I did a Let's Play of about 5 years ago as of recording this video. I figured it was time for a redo because I've gotten better video hardware since then, but also I think I've improved at this game over the years. I actually conquered this game for the very first time about 5 years ago, and that's actually how that Let's Play came to be. But I think I've actually improved at my gameplay style. I figured out a few new strategies and whatnot, and so we're going to go through this game again. I know a lot of people out there that have a Sega CD and have played this game find this game to be very, very difficult, and for really good reason. There are some really questionable design choices in this game that you guys will see firsthand as we get to the late game stages. But yeah, kick back and relax. We're gonna, probably spend the next hour to hour and a half going through this game. It is a long game if you play the full game, which we are going to do. Now, what's cool about this game is it's actually split into two different halves. So you've got the driving sections, which the game actually starts off with, and then you've got the platforming sections. The platforming sections are basically the Genesis cartridge version of Batman Returns, but now with CD audio and whatnot. I think the dynamic between the two modes is pretty good. I know a lot of people actually switch to just the driving only mode, and you can do that, which is really interesting. You can either play just the platforming or just the driving, but a lot of people switch to just the driving. But I feel you're kind of missing out on the full experience. I do enjoy the platform sections in this game. They are a little clunky, as a lot of Western developed Genesis platformers were back in the day, but once you get used to how things work, I think it's still a solid experience. And if you're just doing driving only, you're missing out on the phenomenal music which is in the platforming sections. But the platforming sections are arguably the toughest parts of the game as well. Depending. If you do driving only, you will actually get an extra stage at the end of the driving sections that you don't get in the full game, and that level can just jump off a cliff as far as I'm concerned. Maybe we'll do a live stream and I'll try to finish that and show you guys like how insane that gets, but we're not going to be doing it in this Let's Play. We're just going to play the full game. So yeah, before we actually jump into the options and whatnot, as usual guys, I'd like to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers and live stream super chatters. So they're going to flash by the screen on a slide, so thank you guys for your direct patronage. But with that said, let's go ahead and hit the options menu and I'll sort of explain what's in here. So you do have a lot of options here, and Batman's hand's on the right, and you can basically scroll up and down. So right now it's set to driving only. We're going to hit this and go to full game, so we're going to play the whole thing. You got two different difficulty modes here. Normal is the normal difficulty that we're going to be on. You can change your controls if you want, and this is something I don't normally do when I play games. I usually like to play on default settings, but we are going to crank the lives up to 7, and you guys will see exactly why as we get through this. Like I said, I don't usually do this in games, but Batman Returns is one of those games where I feel like I have to, and the game gives you the choice, so I don't look at it as cheating. So we're gonna go ahead and just stick with 7 lives, full game, and we're gonna hit start and jump into the game. Yeah, the driving sections can be really fun, but the final driving section in the game basically has no combat, whereas, well, until the boss fight. You do some combat at the boss of the final driving section, but all driving sections up to that point have lots of shooting and whatnot. You can slam and ram into enemies as well. It's really fun, actually, and there's a good sense of speed, and the Batmobile actually handles very, very well. I really enjoy what they did with the driving sections in this game, with, a few things aside. So every driving stage has a little bit of an intro like that as well. You can skip through that if you want. But here we go, this is the start of the game. So you can basically hold down the B button to apply your gas, and you can hold down the A button to fire. Now, this is one of those games where if you hold down the button, it only fires for a short period of time. So you do have to keep tapping the button to keep your fire going. You don't have to mash the button. One game I can sort of compare to is like UN Squadron on the Super Nintendo, or Area 88. That's got a combat system where when you press the button, your character will shoot maybe 10 or 15 bullets, and then it'll stop. That's it. So you do have to keep tapping the button, but it's not a game where you have to mash, so do not mash. And so you can basically shoot opponents here, and you have to kill a certain amount before the time runs out in order to progress to the next section. And that's actually denoted at the bottom of the screen. You'll notice that there are a bunch of little red blocks. Each block is an enemy, so you need to make sure you basically deplete that bar by killing enemies. And once it's depleted, you go on to the next section. Again, if you run out of time, though, you lose a life. The white bar above the red bar is actually your health meter, so obviously you don't want that to go down either. One thing that's really cool is as you take more damage, the Batmobile starts to catch on fire and things like that, so it actually shows the damage happening, which is really nice. Most of these driving sections have two bosses, so a boss is on stage 3 and then on stage 6. So what we're going to do with this guy, actually, we're going to use our missiles just because we can. You do have homing missiles. They're denoted in the top left-hand portion of the screen. And we're going to basically use the missiles on this guy because we don't really have a need for them. I generally try to save them for certain bosses, but some of these driving section bosses are basically sort of like puzzle bosses. Like you'll have to ram into the boss with your Batmobile instead of shooting it. So the missiles basically won't do us any good at this main boss fight. So I can go ahead and just use them on enemies like these. Hitting those bat canisters will give you some more missiles. Letting go of gas and holding the down button on the D-pad will actually slow you down. So if you need to slow down, just let go of gas, hold down, and you can get some good aim by doing that. There we go, just wrecking through these guys. Man, the driving section in this game feels so good when you get into the zone and you get into a groove. It's very, very fun. Like, even if you don't, have any interest in the platforming sections, I do still recommend playing this game just for the driving sections alone. The first driving section in particular, I think is probably the best because it's not that hard. It's actually really fun. And I like how, like, the scenery changes and whatnot, so now we're in more of, like, an industrial kind of area, which is really cool. The second driving level, I think, is also really good because it's still difficult, or it gets a little more difficult, but it's still not, like, really, really challenging. And it's got a lot of really cool environments you go to as well. It's a snowy environment. So this is our boss. So what we have to do here is these little fire truck guys come out on their ladders and you need to bump into them. So we just bump into them like that. You do have to shoot the guy, but you can only lower about half of his health by shooting him. The other half has to be depleted by running into these guys. Don't get hit by the flames. The fire is one of the most dangerous things in this game. And I think we're gonna miss. Yeah, we missed. And this is going to be the last one. Ooh, that was bad. See, like I said, don't hit the fire. Now we're going to have to do it again. That's actually a really, really bad place to die. I never die on the first boss in this game. But you can see how the fire just does insane amounts of damage. So don't touch the fire. What I like to do is sort of just like wait and see where he's going to aim. You can see that his turret, goes to the left, it goes to the right. So if it's to the right and you're on the right, you might want to just get over to the left. And you'll notice that it can also change direction. And what was kind of funny about that death too, and this does happen in the game, is we actually killed the boss. We had actually defeated him. He lost all his health, just like right now. But he didn't blow up fast enough. We ended up dying, so... Alright, so on to our first platforming section. Gonna be a little bit of a load section here. This game actually loads relatively quickly. Some Sega CD games could take a while to load. Others, they're very, very snappy. It seems like if, certain games were optimized well, the Sega CD can actually load the data pretty quickly. So yeah, we're on our first platforming section here. You've got these gargoyles that sort of fly around. You got a variety of different attacks here. If you hold down forward and attack, you can kick. Just attacking without pressing any direction will let you punch. Down and punch will allow you to do this sort of sweep attack. Very, very handy. But we're going to come down here. I actually found out about this the other day. I didn't know about this. There's a little bit of a secret there to get some items. What we're going to do is we're going to try to get as many items as we possibly can in this playthrough. And we're going to try to bank them for the most part. They're going to be very specific parts in the course of the game, over the course of the game, where I'm going to use very specific power-ups if I can. But for the most part, I want to try to keep my power-ups. So a lot of these enemies here, I'm just basically going to be punching or kicking or something like that. The kick attack actually is more powerful than your punch, specifically because you can actually hit an enemy multiple times with, you know, sort of your boot, assuming they don't get pushed back too far. So sometimes it's best to use your forward kick if you can. But these guys can be a little irritating. I like to just sort of like tap them with my foot while I duck on the ground. Kind of like that. Notice that every time you hit an enemy in this game, for the most part, they get pushed back a little bit. So that can be a little irritating to deal with. You have a lot of jumping enemies in this game. Oops, I mistimed that. Oops, and I wasn't even paying attention. Yeah, so Batman Returns has a lot of memorization involved in it. And let's see if we can do that. Okay, that was actually kind of risky to do that jump. But I don't recommend going all the way up here because this section has these sort of like little penguin bombs that come down. They float down to the bottom of the screen and they're very difficult to deal with, and chances are you'll get hit by them and you'll lose a lot of health. So pressing up and C will use your sort of harpoon here, which allows you to you know, latch yourself up and propel yourself upward. You can also sort of swing a little bit as well, kind of like Castlevania 4, but you can basically do it on just about any ceiling. Almost any ceiling. Most ceilings in the game you can do it, so really, really handy feature as well. There's going to be some parts in the game that require you to do that. And this is our first boss. This is the Catwoman. And what we're going to do is just punch or kick her, and then either jump down or jump up. Pretty basic stuff. I recommend not knocking her off the building, because when she does that, she pops back up from down below, and it's a little difficult to predict where she's going to come up from. So if you get her close to the edge, just wait and sort of bait her back towards the middle, kind of like this. Doesn't really matter if you punch or kick or use a batarang or something like that. But bosses like this in particular, I don't use my specials. So notice that I've got batarangs on the right-hand side of the screen. I've got 42. I don't even bother using them right now. We're going to have them maxed out in a little bit at 99. So I save them for very specific sections, like this section. This is a very good section to use them, because you'll kill these little clown guys in one hit. And you want to jump over these things, because they'll actually hurt you. Generally, they come out, they go 1, 2, 3, or just 1, 2, so you want to sort of watch them before you do anything. One of the nice things about this game that makes the platforming sections a little bit more doable is that there's no time limit in the platforming sections. This is a really cool looking stage too. I've always liked how it's tilted, you're walking up at an angle. It's very interesting. Now, it is kind of a shame they didn't, you know, update the colors very much for the Sega CD version. You know, the platforming sections are basically just the, you know, the Genesis cartridge version, unfortunately. And what we're going to do is grab this health, and there's also going to be an extra life right here. So what I'm going to do is just sort of hook up like that. So I took a little bit of damage just to get that extra life. Oops, I'm mistiming a lot of stuff here right now, man. I am not with it today, apparently. Normally I'm a lot more precise. So you need to bust these heads otherwise you'll get sucked up and you'll get tossed back to the beginning of that stage. One reason I wanted to tank a little bit on those spikes to get that extra life is that your health is actually refilled generally after every section you go through. So that's actually kind of nice. If there's basically a scene change on the platforming section, your health comes back. So this boss, likewise, what I'll do sometimes is just sit over here, use my batarangs, but again, my health gets refilled, so let me just go ahead and tank and not even worry about getting hit. As long as I kill this guy, it's not a big deal. And there we go. So I had 4 blocks of health, but I'm gonna get all my health back. And there's another extra life right there. You'll notice there are a lot of hidden items in this game hiding behind the foreground objects. So when you're playing this game, you really want to be jumping around everywhere, covering all that screen space that you can. One other neat feature as well, you can actually shoot the batarangs sort of upwards. So something I haven't really explained yet is you do have a bunch of different sub-weapons, and I've already explained the batarangs, but if you hit the start button, you can access your utility belt, and you've got basically homing batarangs right here, you've got a harpoon shot, you've got bats that you can throw out, and then you've got a smoke bomb, which sort of stuns enemies. So we're not going to use any of them. We're just going to stick with our batarangs, and if I really wanted to, I can just sort of like pick guys off from the distance. But again, I like to save my batarangs if I can. This is a kind of a good section to use them though, because these hopping guys are really irritating here. They take 3 hits now as opposed to the 2 that they did earlier. And you've got to watch out as well, because you'll notice that there's a gap in the floor there on the right. You'll actually fall back down to the previous floor. So, a little bit of, you know, tricky stage design with how, you know, the foreground objects intentionally block your view. So that's part of the challenge of this game and part of learning Batman Returns. I think a lot of people get irritated with that, but honestly, there's not a whole lot I think that is like super difficult in the early stages. And once you figure these things out, I think it's actually pretty fun. The platforming sections are very methodical, for sure. Once you know what to do and you play methodically, I think it starts to become pretty enjoyable, actually. I'm actually not a huge fan of a lot of the, you know, Western developed Genesis platformers. A lot of them I feel are very clunky. The colors, you know, look very grainy. Like, just look at the detail in this game. It's very, it's kind of gaudy in a way, you know? And I know some of it was intentional, but I feel like it hasn't aged the best. And a lot of the Japanese developed games were, I think, a lot more polished than stuff like this. But I do still enjoy Batman Returns. I do still enjoy the platforming. I've gotten used to it, and you know, that probably tells me I should probably give more Western developed platformers a chance. And there are several that I want to try to eventually go through, like Chakan, for one, is one I'd like to eventually tackle. But we're basically going to come up here. This is going to be our first major boss fight, which is the Penguin. You have to fight him multiple times over the course of the game, and you want to go ahead and destroy these guys right here. And we've got half of our health. I think we'll do okay here. As long as I get the Penguin into a good loop, we'll be just fine. If not, I might end up losing a life. So basically what you want to do is just punch him, and then hit him a bunch of times. Oops. That's good enough. So every time you hit him, he'll actually come down. And then he'll fly all the way back up, and you gotta wait for him to come back down again. Alright, good deal. We got it. Awesome. And we've got 8 lives. You know, we died on the first driving section, not a huge deal. But again, you know, you're going to see later on in the game why I put it on 7 lives. We're going to need every single life that we can get for the final stage. The final stage is just a nightmare to get through. And it was aside from the last driving section, which was holding me up for a long time, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, the final platforming level was sort of my major roadblock when I tried to tackle this game again about 5 years ago for my first Let's Play. And you guys will see exactly why I got hung up on it. And the thing about this game is you get limited lives and you get limited continues. You can only continue like 3 times or something like that. And it wasn't until I found out that there were level select codes in this game. So if you're having problems with this game, I do recommend looking up the level select code. You can go to game FAQs and basically find it there, and just skip to the levels you're having problems with and just practice them over and over again. I can't talk right now. So these motorcycle guys are really dangerous now, and same with these you know, SUVs and whatnot. So the SUVs will now throw out Molotov cocktails or explosives, and the motorcyclists will actually shoot out missiles now. very, very difficult to sort of deal with. I really like the damage effects on enemies as well. You know, just like the Batmobile, as they take more damage, you know, they start to catch on fire and whatnot. If you're playing for score, which I don't really ever do in this game, but it is just kind of fun to, you know, to sort of think about, is everything you run into on the Batmobile sections will give you points. And one really awesome feature about the driving sections is that you do damage when you slam into objects. So it's very good to run into the enemies, it's very good to be very aggressive. Also, you can smash enemies off the track and bump them into, say, trees, and they'll die in one hit. They'll slam into the roadside object and just die instantly. See, just like that. He slammed into a tree, and now he's dead. And he's dead too. So the third driving section kind of requires that in a way in order to get through the sections. Bam. Just like that. Shooting the enemies is a great strategy on the first driving stage. The second driving stage, it is beneficial to try to bump your enemies off the road, because enemies do have greater amounts of health now. And again, fire is evil in this game, so you really need to stay out of this guy's way. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll sort of hug the side of the screen and just constantly shoot, and I'll make sure that my shots are sort of like going over to the left a little bit, but you'll notice that the road has a lot of hops in it. Let's get over to the left a little bit. And if I really wanted to, I can use some missiles, but what I want to do is preferably keep my missiles for the main boss, because the main boss is more difficult, I'd say. There we go. Awesome. Good job. I like the bosses on the driving sections. They're pretty creative, actually. I'm surprised. Some Western developed games from back in the day can be a little average, you know, not very creative with some of the boss fights and things like that. But this game shows a lot of creativity with the driving stage boss fights. Let's go ahead and just use one of our missiles. And that's also one of my favorite things that can happen on the driving sections, is you can just get propelled way up into the air if you go off like a hill, or kind of like up here. Look at that. The Batmobile gets airtime. It's really satisfying when you're going at full speed and you go over a hill like this and you just slam into an enemy on the way down. I don't think you'll do any extra damage or anything like that, but it's just fun. Let's bump this guy off the side of the road. Nice. He clipped one of the objects and he died. Let's bump this guy over too. So these flamethrower guys are really dangerous because, again, fire is evil in this game. So what I like to do sometimes with them is just sit back a little bit and just sort of play it safe. I have 17 seconds and 2 guys to kill. I think we'll be fine. So, you know, you can just sit back, pick them off from a distance. Man, I really like the graphics on this stage too. You know, seeing like the Ferris wheel in the background and things like that, the circus, it's really cool. And we've got this this cave now, and you got a lot of little bats in the ceiling that sort of get in the way and block your view. The frame rate gets pretty low in this, but it's still very, very playable. It's a very, very playable kind of slowdown. And there we go. So, for those of you guys that don't know, or didn't know, the Sega CD has internalized hardware scaling that the Genesis doesn't really have out of the box. It's got its own video processor, it's got another 68,000 CPU in it, it's got its own like unique sound processor. One thing that's really cool about this game is that it really takes advantage of the Sega CD's hardware scaling. But it also takes advantage, particularly on the driving sections, it takes advantage of the Sega CD's sound hardware as well. So all of these sound effects that you're hearing are actually being driven by the Sega CD and not the Genesis. And one thing I've been doing lately is I've hooked my Model 1 Genesis up to my Model 2 Sega CD, and basically what I'm doing is I'm using the mixing cable. You don't have to use the mixing cable in certain instances, but by using the mixing cable, you can actually use the Genesis volume knob to mute the Genesis side of the audio. And by doing that, I've actually noticed there are a lot of Sega CD games that make really good use of the Sega CD's internal sound hardware. I'll mute the Genesis side of things, but the whole soundtrack will still be there. Because, you know, it's just not using the Genesis sound hardware for most sound effects. So pretty much every sound effect you hear in the driving sections is being driven by the Sega CD. Another good example is playing Final Fight. And actually, I'll kind of go back on this tangent in a minute. So this guy is really, really dangerous. He shoots out these little mini clowns here in clown cars, and they shoot to the side. They'll shoot right into you. But he also shoots out a cannonball, so you have to basically be out of his way. And what I'm going to do is just use my missiles. This is exactly why I wanted to save my missiles. And that was actually probably like the best fight I've ever had on that guy. Like, he didn't put up a fight at all. But yeah, the cannonballs will take away like a third of your health in one hit. It's really, really dangerous. And then the little clown guys will shoot these little missiles out to the sides. So if you try to get really close to the boss, they'll get up to speed with you, and they'll just keep shooting you. So it's really tough to avoid. I like to sit back a little bit. And for this part, we're basically just going to be kicking these cyclists. For the ones that come behind, a lot of times I like to just use my batarangs. But notice that my batarangs are pretty much maxed out now, so I can go ahead and start using them again. But yeah, as far as the sound effects go, unfortunately, the platforming sections still are, you know, they're like the Genesis cartridge version of the game, except with CD audio. They still use, you know, the same kind of sound effects, you know, driven by the Genesis itself. So the platforming sections are definitely not as impressive as the driving sections. You know, in the driving sections, they're taking full advantage of the Sega CD, the added Sega CD hardware, and it's great. It really shows. And I wish more games did that. So for this guy right here, this guy can be a major pain. So what I'm going to do is actually switch over to my homing batarangs. We're going to go ahead and just use these. And we're going to get plenty of these later on in the game, so I'm not going to really worry about using them. And I'm going to go ahead and just switch back now. And let's actually come up this way. This is probably a little more safe. But this guy does a ton of damage to you if he gets up to you and punches you. See, look at that. But I like to save this health as well. All the hearts in the game give you health. And there we go. And there's going to be a lot of kicking in this game. For the rest of the game, really. So what I like to do is get up to these guys and just poke them like this. These guys are just out of your reach, so you have to get in close, tap them once, and then they bounce back. So just tap them like that, and you got to time it just right. You can also punch bullets in this game, so if you ever see someone shooting at you, you can just kick the bullet out of their hands if you want. You could probably punch these daggers, just like this, but that's a little more risky. I don't really recommend doing it. And sometimes you can use your batarangs as well. There are going to be a lot of power-ups and things like that too, so we're going to go ahead and just try to get all of them that we can. And we're just going to try to sort of punch this guy, or kick him. And I am not focusing now. This is supposed to be a better playthrough, but so far, I've made a lot of mistakes. But at least we haven't died that much, so, you know, there is that. So we're going to come up to the, you know, the right-hand side here and just try to kill all the enemies that are here. What I do is I come up to the right, and then I go back down to the bottom just to collect all the power-ups and whatnot. This part right here, you can just tap that guy in the head. There's the harpoon power-up. The harpoon is very, very powerful. Alright, so if we try to come up here, we're going to get hit by another gun guy. So if I wanted to, I could have used a, you know, homing batarang and kill him from down below, but it's not really worth it. You're going to end up coming back up that way from the other side. So let's come over here, cross over by jumping on this escalator and then going down. The flames on the ground, do not touch them. They will hurt you. So every little flame that we see on the same plane as us, we need to jump over. And hopefully we can stop getting hit by these guys. And hopefully I don't get hit by any of this fire or anything like that. There is going to be some health up here. So I'm going to try to snipe this guy from a distance. Just like that. And we're basically going to come back up this way and go over to the left. And we have to swing off that. And we're just going to go ahead and, you know, use the batarangs. I really don't want to die. But we're good now. We got some health. Whoa, where did you come from? I forgot that guy spawns in like that. If you go get the health, he spawns in. Alright, so we're going to try to just get up here and duck, just like that. Just inch our way forward. And no power-ups up there. And just kick them, and kick them just like that. And I only have 4 blocks of health, so I'm going to go ahead and just sort of play it safe here. And so we're going to go ahead and just use our batarangs. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is actually switch over to this bat attack. And we're going to go ahead and just attack the Catwoman. So this is Catwoman round 2. Ooh, I missed that. That was bad. Sometimes you can sort of time it to where she just wakes up right into it. Alright, so round 2 of the Penguin. And he basically drops this ball that chases after you. It'll crush you and kill you in one hit. So we need to just jump. Constantly jump here to gain momentum. And we just missed the extra life. Not a big deal. What I'm more concerned about are some of these power-ups, though. Kind of like that. I'm definitely going to need those harpoons for later. And you want to jump over. If you fall down in that pit, you die. And so just like Penguin round 1, we basically just punch him. Whenever you hit him from the air, he'll just come down straight like that. You really don't want to let him run around. It looks really easy, but if you let him go around, he starts shooting, he starts slamming into you, and stuff like that. So you want to just get him into a loop like this, where when he comes down, you just jump straight up, you punch him, and when you hit him, you sort of like bait him straight down. And so driving section number 3, this is where we're going to be using a lot of aggressive driving here. We're going to be slamming into enemies, trying to bump them off the side of the road into roadside objects. Basically, you know, you have less time to work with, and you end up having enemies that have more health, and you have to kill more enemies as well. So, you know, the stakes are a little bit higher here. So you really want to just slam enemies off the road if you can. Also, the cyclists are a lot more dangerous here. Likewise with the SUVs, they're a lot more aggressive. Alright, not a good start. So, you really want to look at the vehicles as well. You can tell when they're about to shoot. And so, you know, for the cyclists, you want to, you know, you don't want to be in their line of sight when they shoot, because you will get hit, and it will do lots of damage. But you can see that the Batmobile is sort of flaming up now, which is really cool. But yeah, you know, I wanted to get back on that tangent about the Sega CD internalized, you know, its added hardware that, you know, makes it stand out from like a stock Genesis. And as far as the audio thing I was talking about earlier, I've been playing around with muting the Genesis side and seeing what games on the Sega CD actually take advantage of the Sega CD's added sound hardware. This is a feature that a lot of people don't talk about when they talk about the Sega CD. They say, oh, there are a lot of Genesis games on a CD with CD music and maybe some full motion video, and that's it. But in some cases, there's actually a lot of added audio that's being driven by the Sega CD sound hardware. So you've got high quality samples, and you don't really notice it, and like you don't really think about it until you do something like I've been doing, where you just mute the Genesis side and experiment. And it's been really an interesting experiment. One great example is I found out the other day, kind of like the driving sections here in Batman Returns, Final Fight CD, all of the sound effects in the game are driven by the Sega CD's internal sound hardware. I had no idea. So all the voice samples and things like that, all the attacks, the punches and kicks and all that stuff, being driven by the Sega CD sound hardware. It's really cool stuff. And You know, I always thought a game like that was a combination of both pieces of sound hardware. You know, the Genesis sound processor and the Sega CD sound processor. But in some games, like Final Fight, it is all driven by the Sega CD. So some CD-based add-ons back in the day didn't really add a whole lot. So like the TurboGrafx CD, its initial model was basically just a CD drive, and that was it. There wasn't really an extra processor or extra graphical horsepower or anything like that. Later revisions, like the Turbo Duo, added some more memory, some more RAM, basically, which definitely helped a lot. But it didn't really add any extra, you know, sound capabilities or anything like that. But yeah, this is boss number 1 for this section. So what you want to do is not touch these pipe bombs. They will explode and they do a ton of damage. So they sort of blink right before they drop. So once they start blinking, you want to get out of the way. And you'll notice there are constant hills here, going up and down and up and down. So you sort of want to shoot when you're on the you know, at the bottom of the hill if you can. Your shots will go upward and they will still hit, but look at that. That just took away like a third of my health in one hit. So very, very dangerous bosses in this game. And we just want to take our time here. Ooh, that was bad. That was really, really bad. And we're dead. I actually cut that corner way too sharp. I ended up just running right into it. Alright, well, let's try it again. This boss can sometimes give me some trouble. It's kind of a crapshoot whether I get it perfectly on my first try. Same with the main boss on stage 6 here. And the stage 6 boss of this driving section is another puzzle-oriented boss. So there's actually not much shooting involved outside of just trying to get some objects out of your way. And I'll sort of explain that boss once we get to it. If I wanted to, I could actually use my homing missiles right now, which is probably a good idea, and I should have actually done that on the first attempt. But you'll notice that the missiles actually slammed into the pipe bombs, so they didn't really do a whole lot for me, but they did take a little bit of health off. Alright, we should be able to get this. I just need to get up a little bit closer. And there we go. Alright, so 2 more actual action sections, and then the boss fight, and then we're back to platforming. We're gonna actually sort of play it safe against these guys too, because again, they've got flamethrowers. Problem with the flamethrower guys is that it's really difficult to just run into them and smash them off the side of the road. Because you might go to push them off the road, but they'll start shooting like as you get close. And you'll end up taking a lot of damage as a result. You can tell that they're going to start shooting because they blink. So that's how you can tell that the flamethrower guys are going to start shooting. Alright. That was good. Let's try to bump him off. Did we get him? We got him. Nice. We slammed him off the side of the road. Alright, just one more enemy. I'm not too worried about my health right now, actually. You know, one thing that's nice is that between every section of the driving stages, you do get some health back. And I think the amount of health you get back might be dependent on how well you do. I'm not entirely sure about that. If anybody knows, definitely post a comment. But it does feel like sometimes I get more health back than others, so I almost feel like it's based on performance. Alright, there we go. 6 more to go. We got plenty of time. We're gonna be good on this. And we're gonna take this part a little bit slow. Oh, we got him. We smashed him. Alright, one more and then it's boss time. Still doing pretty well in lives. We've died a couple times, not a big deal. We still have 7 lives. And we'll probably get a couple more extra lives over the course of the game. Alright, so this boss is interesting. You actually have to bump into a little target, which causes damage. But you don't want to touch these ice blocks. They do a ton of damage. So what I like to do is try to stay relatively close and hit the target as it comes up. Like right as it appears. Unfortunately, the target's only up for a short period of time. And that time it's up, or out, is shorter and shorter as the boss fight goes on. Very nice. Halfway. You notice the ice blocks start coming out at a faster rate as well. Alright, 3 more hits. These last few hits are definitely the toughest to get. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just tank a hit just to hit the target. Man, that was a good pattern, man. Getting that boss on the first try is always a really good feeling. Because it's one of the trickiest bosses in the game, without a doubt. And I love, like, the added detail on, like, the, you know, the side of the road. They definitely went above and beyond on the driving sections in this game. And, again, that's the Sega CD's internal hardware scaling, you know, put to great use. I wish more games on the add-on took advantage of said hardware. But they did a really good job with Batman Returns on the driving sections. Oops! I was still on the bat attack. So one thing that you have to keep in mind in this game is when you go from, you know, when you change modes, the game remembers what power-up you had last selected. So you really want to waste your good power-ups. So what we're going to do is just sort of jump over that first projectile and then, or jump over... I can't even talk right now. Man, I am so out of it today. With those little guys with the hats... They'll basically shoot a projectile upwards that you want to duck under, and then they'll shoot another one low that you want to jump over. These characters, I just shoot them from a distance. They're not really worth getting close to. You know, there's so many like basic batarangs in this game that I don't really worry about using them on sections like this. So, while I do like to conserve my ammo, particularly like the really, really good weapons that we're going to be using on some of the late bosses in the game, the batarangs, you know, I use them, you know, at certain points. I don't always use them. Like, a lot of times right now, I'll actually just get close to these guys and just kick them. So that's a low attack, and then you jump over and you kick them a few times. And there's a heart, sort of a hidden heart there, blocked by the foreground. There's also going to be an extra life right there, but we want to kill these guys first. You notice that the game reuses a lot of the earlier enemies, but they become more irritating as the game goes on. So the jumping guys now shoot 2 projectiles out, and it's very difficult to avoid those projectiles, so I sort of just tank, and I take the hits. There are enough, you know, heart refills, or heart power-ups, you know, life refills in the game to where it's not a huge deal. And we just duck, and I can just use my batarangs. And that guy is legitimately stuck. Yeah, you can see they're just really troublesome to deal with. But the next section is going to come up here in a minute, and we're going to get all our health back. So it's not really a huge deal. And if I want to sort of like pick up my speed a little bit, I just jump around when I play this game. It's a lot faster than walking. Alright, and that's it. Section number 2. And we're just gonna jump up like this and punch her. And there should be an extra life, I think, right here. So what we're gonna... Oh, actually, it's not an extra life. It's just some power-ups. What I'm gonna do is do that and just jump up like that. There's a pit down below, so if I didn't do that, I would have died. And we can sort of get on the slope here and just punch these guys. Just like that. There should actually be a power-up up top here. So what I'm going to do is get off... I don't know why it switched me back to this attack. You really have to watch out for that. I wonder if it's a bug in the game. There we go. And that is a homing batarang. It was actually 2. It gave us 2, which is really, really handy. That's a smoke bomb. We're just going to float down here. Yeah, something I haven't really explained is you hold down A in the air and you can basically bust out your wings, which will slow you down, which is really nice. There's some nice features in the platforming section. I got to give it that. For these guys, I just duck in front of them. Their projectile will pretty much go over my head, guaranteed. If I try to stand up and punch them, I will get hit. So this is the preferred strategy against these guys. Just like that. And these guys actually punch out at you, but you can actually punch them in the face, and they will break. You don't want to jump up and touch those little lights, though. They will actually explode, and they will hurt you. So you'll notice that I won't jump here at all. And remember that you can kick bullets in this game. There we go. So I actually have a new strategy for this this boss fight. For this boss fight that's coming up, what I would usually do in the past is I would use special moves or special items against them. But now we're just gonna kick them, and I'll show you what I mean by that. For those of you guys that have never seen this boss, you'll understand what I'm talking about once I get there. For this part, I like to sort of... Ooh, and I messed up. You have to be really careful here, because these guys can actually shoot the net, and they cause a hole to appear, and you'll fall through and you'll die. But I like to basically sort of float over like this, and kill these guys as quickly as possible if I can. Very, very dangerous enemies. The hitboxes are a little weird on these too, so you'll take a hit even when it looks like you shouldn't take a hit. And we're just gonna sort of keep coming over here just like this. There's some power-ups you can get down below. I don't think they're worth going for. Very, very dangerous to get. Good chance that you'll die trying to get them. But this is our boss fight. We're basically just gonna come straight up like this and just kick them, like so. And that's it. So a lot of times what happens is you kill both of them, and then they constantly spawn out from the left and right hand side, and you can just kick back and forth like this. And these guys can be a little tricky to deal with, but you want to just get down and kick them like so. And more of these guys. I will say there are a lot of irritating enemies in Batman Returns, the platforming sections. So you wanna find a good strategy and just go with it. These things will actually sort of like bump into you when you get close. Oops, I actually went too far there. Unfortunately, I took a hit. There's gonna be some blades here you've got to jump over. There is definitely some precise platforming in here, for sure. Like these things, you have to jump just right, otherwise you will get hit. And more blades. And we're just gonna shoot this guy. Just like that. And boss time. Unfortunately, I think we're I was gonna say, unfortunately we're gonna die, and I died before I could even say it. So this guy actually causes flames to appear, and you want to watch out for the flames. They're probably the most dangerous part. But we're just gonna sort of sit back from a distance, wait for the flames. And let's go ahead and use one of our attacks here. We'll go ahead and use this. Just like that. And there actually is some health over to the side, but if you try to jump for it, you can fall off the train and die. So it's really risky to get. It's good to just sort of stay far back. You really have to watch for the flames though. So you sort of wait for them to appear. And then you sort of react and you just move out of the way. As long as you can sit back to at the, you know, the back of the train, you should be good. So this is, when it comes to the full game that you play, where you play both the driving and the platforming sections, this is the worst driving section in the game. It's all reactionary stuff. It's no shooting really. So you can shoot, but you just shoot to open up the doors and that's pretty much it. There aren't any enemies. Until the boss, which is on stage 6. So we're gonna try, hope for the best here. Usually I do pretty well here. This used to be my roadblock. Probably in 2002, 2003, I was never able to get past this stage. And it wasn't until I really buckled down and put in some time on this stage back then that I was finally able to progress. But then I ended up getting hung up on the final stage, and I was hung up for at least a good decade. Until I found the level select code and then practiced the final stage. This was when I was already doing Let's Plays and things like that, so I was more dedicated to the cause. And then we finally got it. But yeah, this level had me hung up for a very, very long time, and I'd imagine that this is where people are gonna get hung up. You know, and there's... You know what's funny? I'm gonna go on a different tangent here, but a lot of people prefer the driving sections in this game. But I sometimes wonder if those same people ever got to this point in the game. Because this is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. People have problems with, like, the turbo tunnels. The turbo tunnel in Battletoads. If they think that's bad, this is just nightmarish levels of, you know, difficult when it comes to that style of just dodging gameplay. And you'll see what I mean. It gets crazier and crazier and crazier. And it just culminates at stage 5. But the thing is, if you play just the driving mode, you get another level after this, which is a combination of combat and this reactionary dodging kind of gameplay. But the times are even shorter. It's very, very, very difficult to get through. So yeah, the people that say they enjoy the driving sections more, again, I sometimes wonder if they actually got this far into the game. Because this is where I think a lot of people are going to get hung up with Batman Returns on Sega CD. But I would argue that the last driving stage that's not in the full game, that's only in the driving mode, is actually worse than this. Because the tight timing, you've got combat involved, the enemies are extremely dangerous. They're the most dangerous enemies in the whole game. Thankfully, it is not in the full game, because I don't think anyone would probably beat this game if the last driving stage was in the full game. I'm really glad they cut it out, but it also gives you a reason to play just the driving mode. One of the really cool things about this game is that you've got multiple endings depending on the type of game that you play. So if you do full game, where you play the driving stages and the platforming stages, you get one ending. If you do just the driving, you'll get another ending. And if you do just the platforming, you'll get another ending. It's pretty cool. Now, the endings are really small in this game. It's usually just Batman sitting on a tower or something like that, and it, you know, it uses the Sega CD's hardware scaling to do some kind of zoom-in effect, which is pretty cool. But the ending and the credit rolls and things like that are different. So, you know, the game, it gives you replay value. I really like it when games sort of have, like, you know, baked in replay value, just with multiple endings and things like that. It's a nice touch, and it keeps me coming back to the game. You know, I'll sit down to stream this game on Twitch, and I'll be like, do I want to just do the platforming section, or do I want to do just the driving section, or do I want to do the full game? Like, what ending do I want to show to the audience that's watching? You know, and it makes it interesting for people watching, too. Because they're like, oh, I haven't seen this ending. You know, it's a really cool little feature, and it's something that you didn't really see in a lot of these older games from the 16-bit era. You didn't really have a lot of multiple endings in a lot of games from back then. But for this game to have that, I think is really something. This game is definitely not going to be for everybody. As you can see, I mean, as you can see what I'm doing here, it is definitely not going to be for everybody. And we're going to basically try to slow down and just hop on these ramps. Now, if you jump up too high here, you'll actually hit the top of the hole, and you'll hit it and you'll get bounced backwards. So when I'm doing this, I'm actually letting go of gas so I don't jump quite as high. There's a lot of subtlety to this driving stage in particular that, you know, you don't really see by just watching. You know, if I could like map out the, you know, my hand motions and whatnot, it would make more sense. So now you've got these walls that come out that you have to dodge. They basically come out and then they go back, and then they come out and then they go back. These ones chomp down. So you don't want to run into them. Sometimes we're going to actually have to stop ourselves, though. You know, when you run into stuff in this section, you do lose health. So you still have your regular health bar and whatnot. And you basically have two ways you can die here. You can either take too much damage, or you can run out of time. And unfortunately, it gets really, really stressful when your health gets really, really low, and your time is low. So you're battling the clock as well as, you know, a failing shield, basically. So, and that sort of raises, you know, it sort of puts you in a conundrum where you have to go really fast, but going really fast, you're more likely to slam into stuff and die. So it gets very, very tense. I remember in my first Let's Play of this game many, many years ago, I think what I had to do is actually literally stop talking. Like, it was that difficult for me. I had to just focus 100% of the time. Fortunately, I don't have to do that now. I'm much better at talking and playing than I was 5 years ago. Can't believe it's been 5 years, man. Can't believe it's been 5 years. But yeah, I'm much better at talking and playing nowadays. So I can actually play this and still talk at the same time. So we're going to basically slow down for these guys. What I like is when I can keep at full speed and just rip right through these things, like the timing is just right. But unfortunately the timing was not right there, so we weren't able to do it. This, like I said, this game is really long too. You know, a lot of times when I used to play this game, this is where I would start to get worn out. And we still have more platforming to do after this. There are multiple platforming sections to go. We have to fight the penguin 2 more times. And we do fight a couple of other bosses too in the meantime, up until then. But the rest of the game shouldn't be that bad, to be honest with you. We're actually kind of, I think, ripping through it at a pretty good pace. I mean, we're at just about an hour right now. We've probably got another 20 or 30 minutes to go. Actually, probably not 30 minutes, but probably a good 20 minutes, yeah. I mean, we just had another, you know, 2.5 minutes added to the clock, basically. And the last stage in here, I think, is 200 seconds. So, you know, that's like almost 3.5 minutes. So this stage alone is the longest, by far the longest stage in the game. And it's actually pretty tough to just, like, you know, spin like that and go, you know, through these, the gaps. But I've gotten pretty good at doing that. But if you guys think this is bad, you should see the driving-only exclusive stage. It is nightmarishly bad. I definitely want to try to tackle that sometime. Maybe do, like, a live YouTube stream, where I just try to tackle the driving section on its own. So for one, I can show you guys the ending, but also, you know, show you the final driving stage, which I don't think a lot of people have actually seen. You know, because I don't think a lot of people actually get past this level. You know, you have to do this level first, and then you do the exclusive map, or the exclusive level. I'm saying map like I'm playing Doom or something, but I'm not. I'm playing Batman Returns. Yeah, and you've got to watch out. The collision detection here is interesting, to say the least. So sometimes you'll actually, you know, clip it, and sometimes you'll get hit, sometimes you won't. But yeah, the exclusive driving stage is extremely, extremely difficult. The gaps between objects that you have to squeeze through are actually even smaller. And it's very difficult to tell where the gap actually is, because again, you can sort of clip through objects a little bit in this. And sometimes you'll get hit, sometimes you won't, and finding where, like, the hitboxes lie is really challenging. Really... Oops! I deserved that one. I just went straight into the middle. Batman apparently wants to end his life. I mean, if I was Batman right now, I probably would too. I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. And the Penguin clearly wants nobody to get to his lair. I don't blame him. Yeah, I really like on these driving sections the sort of like wavy water effect. Really cool. That's the Sega CD's internal hardware. You know, it's its added graphics processor. You know, at full work. It's awesome. I wish more Sega CDs really took advantage of it. You know, I don't know, you know, I'm not really a historian. I don't know what, you know, Sega's, I don't know what Sega was really trying to do with the Sega CD. Like, was it a direct answer to the Super Nintendo and it's, you know, it's Mode 7 and stuff like that? It's sort of, you know, hardware scaling. But it looks great on Sega CD, and in a way, it actually looks a lot more natural than Super Nintendo's, you know, scaling effects, which are kind of rudimentary in a way compared to what you get with the Sega CD's hardware scaling. Now, it would have been great, it would have been amazing if Sega had basically used a processor that allowed for higher color capabilities. So, you know, say Sega CD games could be, you know, they could use hundreds of colors on screen instead of just the 64 or whatever the Genesis does. But unfortunately, the Sega CD, it's still basically limited to the Genesis color palette. So while you've got all these awesome scaling effects, they don't look as awesome as they probably could have, but they still look great. I really love the Sega CD's hardware scaling. Like, you've got these, not even just hardware scaling, but it's got scaling, it's got rotation, it's got all that good stuff. So you've got this awesome water effect, you know, it's bouncing up and down. You've got the, you know, the overhead lights and whatnot, they're scaling. And you've got all these objects that are rotating smoothly as well. It's really good stuff. It would have been really interesting, too, to see more arcade-esque games on the Sega CD that were trying to echo, say, the Sega Superscaler style of games. You know, like a Sega CD version of Space Harrier could have been really cool. There is an Afterburner 3, but it was a pretty terrible conversion, unfortunately. And so it actually does not run very well, does not play very well. And it doesn't even scale very well, as far as I remember. Definitely nothing like Batman Returns here. So I need to play it safe now. We've lost half of our health. Ah, man. So one thing I like to do is try to, like, just really focus on the gaps here, and I try to look as far back as I can to see where the next gap is going to be, and I try to position myself, or get ready to position myself to go through it. Yeah, we're going to be cutting it close on this one, most likely. We have 4 blocks of health. Or can we make it? We made it. Awesome. See, this is like the ideal timing where, you know, you basically keep almost top speed and these things just happen to open like right as you get to them. And I knew that was going to happen. I should have stopped. One other thing you have to worry about here is when you hop off these ramps, you'll actually bounce into the air just a little bit. And you'll actually hit the top of the gap. Ooh, that was close. Oh, I thought I could get through that. Alright, we have 2 more hits. We have to be really, really safe here. Technically just 1 more hit. And I think this is it. Yep. Awesome. Perfect. Alright, well, we got through it, guys. So it's boss time now. What I do like about Let's Playing games like this, where you have really long sections, is I can sort of, like, ramble on about different topics that I don't normally get to talk about when I Let's Play. So it kind of takes me back a little bit to when, say, 5 years ago, I used to Let's Play a lot of longer games, and so there would be more opportunity to talk. So this guy's mouth opens, and he reveals a target, and you have to shoot it. As his health gets low, his eyeballs will actually go out, and they'll stop shooting at you. But unfortunately, this attack does do a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and use some missiles, too. Fortunately, when you die, you get your missiles back. Alright, so one of his eyes are out. And that's it. Wow, we almost died. But we got it. And I just now noticed an effect where the shrapnel from, you know, his explosion lands in the water and it actually causes splashes to come up. It's a really, really cool effect that I never really noticed before. Again, that's the Sega CD, you know, internal hardware scaling doing its thing. Not just hardware scaling, but whatever. You know what I'm saying. It's really awesome. I love little details like that. And seeing it in a game this old is kind of impressive to me, actually. So I don't think we can jump up here. But what we're going to do is actually just come straight down like this. I don't even bother with the top half on this stage in particular. What we're going to do is just sort of just wait until this guy shoots. He shoots about 4 times and then he stops, giving you sort of a nice little gap there. But look, it actually switched me to the harpoon by default, because it was actually the last weapon I used on that boss, I think. So we definitely want to switch back to the batarang. And we're going to try to actually jump up here to get a power-up, just like so. We're just going to wait for this guy to stop shooting. So there you go, 4. And then you can just come up and kick him, or punch him, or do whatever you need to. And we can just try to... Never mind, I was going to say punch these guys, but he just kept going. Grab that health. And we're just going to come down here like so. And just wait for him to stop shooting. You notice that the water actually keeps pushing you over. So you do have to keep moving here. And I think there might be some power-ups here. Yeah, there's one. Let's just skip that guy and just come right down here. And this is our boss. So one thing I like to do is actually use the smoke bombs on this guy. So you'll hit him and he'll go down below the screen and then he'll come back. And his fire is really, really dangerous. So let's go up. Ooh, I was going to say let's go up and grab this heart. Just like so. So what I used to do is actually get down and just kick him. And that's a totally viable strategy as well. But it can be a little risky. And this is a slower strategy, without a doubt. Like, I'm not doing as much damage. Basically, every smoke bomb is taking away 1 block of health. But it's, honestly, it's a little bit easier, a little bit safer than getting right up in his face. It's just what you have to watch out for is when he comes up with this fire, the hitbox on the fire is just massive. Like his stick. And it takes away, I think, like 3 blocks of health. And just the fire itself looks like it takes away 2 blocks of health. But not a big deal. We got plenty of smoke bombs, and as long as we can defeat him, we get all our health back. And there we go. We're good. So unfortunately, I think I actually missed a secret area that I really wanted to show off. I think it was on the previous stage right before the boss fight. For this section, though, what I actually recommend doing is, unlike the first stage, once you get past this first half, I recommend actually staying up on the higher path. Oh, no, this is the secret. Awesome. I thought I missed it. So this is a great secret to get. You get an extra life or 2, you get your health back. Just watch out for that water that spits out. So you want to just keep falling, because there are a bunch of different power-ups here. And as you fall down to the left, other power-ups will appear. It's really weird how it works. Yeah, we're really good with our arsenal, by the way. We've got a lot of special weapons, which is going to make the final stage a lot easier. So we've got 17 homing batarangs, we've got 17 harpoons, we've got 12 of the bat things, and we still have 24 smoke bombs. So what I'm going to do is actually probably... No, I'm not going to use the smoke bombs. I'm going to save them for the final stage if I can. So this is an interesting part right here. You actually have to sort of come up like this, sort of latch on, and you can actually move up or down, and you want to sort of get it to where you can start swinging back and forth. So this is a really awkward section, and we're probably not going to get it. Let's see if we can come down a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. So just swing back and forth, and then jump. We got it. So for this section, we want to sort of take the high road. So we're going to get up as high as we can. Just like so. If I wanted to, I can just punch the bullets or kick the bullets. Just like so. Yeah, so you can see how the top path is relatively safe. The bottom path, on the other hand, not so much. But the top path will actually just take you right to where you need to go. And on the bottom path, there are actually a lot of endless pits and whatnot. And what we're going to do is actually switch over to our homing. And we're just going to sort of stay back and just use it. So one thing you can do here is actually attack the gun. You just get next to it on the right-hand side. But if you stay far enough back, your homing batarangs will actually target the penguin and you won't get hit by that green slime. And so this is actually the final stage in the game, so wish me luck here. This place is... it's nightmare fuel. It's really, really bad. And so it's got Battletoad syndrome, where you have limited continues and the game is long. So by the time you get here on a first playthrough, you are worn out. You are done. All right, so we have to basically duck here. There are ice physics now, everybody's favorite form of physics. And what we're gonna do is just come up here and punch this guy, just like so. And we're gonna jump over here. There are a couple power-ups you can pick up. But what we want to do is just go straight up. So we want to actually use our hook here and just come up like this. And what I'm going to do is, yeah, use the smoke bomb. Just like so. And we're going to come this way because there are a few power-ups we want. There we go. Now there's some good power-ups down to the bottom left, but it's really not worth doing. And one thing you can do here is just get off to sort of the side and then just punch this wall here. And we get some good little power-ups there. So what we're going to do is actually switch over to our homing batarang for this part coming up. We're going to use it and then get over. Nice, we got that guy first try. These ice physics, this level actually wouldn't be so bad if it didn't have ice physics, but the ice physics make it really difficult to move. Okay, very good. Switch back to our homing batarang, and we're going to use our float move right here. Now, we don't want to fall to the left. If we do, we can get some health back, but you'll fall into a pit that takes you back to the beginning of the stage. So, again, some really irritating design choices here. Let's go ahead and just use this. Just like so, just to make life easier. But there's an extra life here that you can get. Just like so. Now, you don't want to just walk all the way over to that extra life because you will fall into a pit. It'll take you back to the beginning of the stage. Well, that's bad. But that's okay, we get to start. One good thing about dying in the platforming sections is typically you actually just respawn right where you died. And there should be more health right here as well. Unfortunately, we died, but, you know, it's not the end of the world. Alright, so this part coming up, once we kill this guy, I believe right here, you just fall down straight. Now, one nice thing is, and this is something that's really good to take advantage of, is holding down will scroll the screen down. A lot of old platformers did that. But right here, we just want to fall straight down. Just like so. Ooh, we almost fell and died. Okay, so what we're going to do is actually switch back to the homing batarang. Just like so. In this part, you have to duck, otherwise you'll get hit by that, and you will get knocked off and you'll die. Alright, so for this part right here, we're basically going to just kick these guys, and use some batarangs. But this is pretty much the home stretch, guys. Well, that was actually a really good, you know, final stage there. We only died once. So that was actually really good. You can just get annihilated on that stage. Oops. Now this part is a little tricky to deal with. I don't really have a strategy here, but what I do is I try to stay on the larger ice block. You know, sometimes I'll jump over to the left, but I find that it's not really worthwhile. You're best off just standing on this default ice block that you appear on. You notice the other ice blocks are smaller, so there's the greater likelihood that you'll get hit and you'll get knocked off. So I'll just tank a few hits. We pretty much get all of our health back. Just like you do when you change scenes. So we're going to go ahead and use the harpoon here. It's very, very good on this boss. We just use it like that. And that's it. Let's actually get this health. So this is basically a two-stage boss. So we beat the first form. Now we have to go to the second form. So the penguin's gonna have two projectiles. The first one can be destroyed, but if you get hit by it, it'll freeze you. And his second projectile is a homing shot that can't be destroyed. And it does a lot of damage. So you basically don't want to get hit by the first shot. If you don't get hit by the first shot, then it's a lot easier to dodge the second shot. So we just kick it, and then we can jump over this second one. So what we need to do is we have to destroy this machine here. We're just gonna use the harpoon. And just jump over that. And one thing I can do is, I don't know. I have a lot of choices here. I definitely want to use the harpoon because it's good damage. And we got hit by that, so it takes away 3 blocks of health, unfortunately. Let's come over here. Kick that, and just do it like that. I'm gonna go ahead and... Well, we got 3 homing batarangs, so that's good. So we just kick that, and then we jump, just like so. And we're gonna go ahead and use our bats here. So you have to kick that machine, otherwise Penguin will not die. He'll keep getting his health back. And this is where I got hung up on back in the day. I actually learned how to beat the final stage. Not very consistently, but I was able to do it. I'd get here and I'd die. I'd be like, I don't know what's going on. Well, it turns out you have to destroy that machine first. The Penguin's actually not that difficult. I used to think he was really, really difficult, but now when you know the strategy, it's actually pretty easy, as long as you've banked your power-ups. That's why I banked my power-ups, to make the final boss basically a cakewalk. So we basically use the harpoon on the big duck, and when we go up, if we have any leftover harpoon ammo, we'll use it on the machine. And then once the machine's gone, we just, you know, we go by a simple pattern. And there you go, that is Batman Returns, the full game on the Sega CD. I hope you guys enjoyed this playthrough. Like I said, it's one of my favorite games. I don't think it's one of my favorite Sega CD games. I don't think it's going to be for everybody. It is a very difficult game, but when you know some of the strategies, it is a whole lot easier to deal with. So for anyone that has thought about tackling this game, hopefully this video will help you get through some tough sections. As long as you know where to be, what weapons to use, and things like that, it's a very, very doable game. It's just, it's long. We're at 1 hour and 20 minutes now. It took us 1 hour and 20 minutes to beat this game. You know, if I didn't die a few times, we might have saved 5 minutes. But overall, it is a very long and very long experience that requires a lot of endurance, unfortunately. But I like it. Like I said, I love the hardware, like the internalized scaling the Sega CD's doing. The soundtrack is fantastic. Spencer Nilsson did a bang-up job on this game. Just Really, really great music. And he did a lot of really good Sega CD music as well. But I'd say Batman Returns is probably his most noteworthy, in my opinion. And it's definitely a fantastic soundtrack. Lots of, cinematic type stuff, but you got some jazzy stuff, you got some, some heavy metal and hard rock, which is great. It fits very, very well. And it's one reason why I definitely recommend this over the Genesis cartridge version, because while that soundtrack is cool, it fit that version of the game, it's just more like generic Genesis music, nothing too special. You get some breakbeats and things like that. But this soundtrack for Sega CD Batman Returns, they just took it to a whole other level, and it's a very memorable soundtrack, and it just works very, very well. Goes well with The Dark Knight. So, but yeah, like I said, if you play the other modes, if you play just the platforming section or just the driving section, you do get alternate endings. So, one thing I might do is I'll probably do a live stream where I play through both modes separately, so you guys can see the other two endings. I think that'll be a good short-ish live stream. Granted, the driving section it's going to take some practice. I'm just going to practice live on stream, on the YouTube stream, so you guys will see me sort of fail live. I know some of you guys like to see me fail, or wish you saw me fail. A lot of times I'm well practiced at these games, so when I come into my Let's Plays now, I don't fail. The point is to get through them and show you strategies. But my live streams can be a little more relaxed, and occasionally I'll play some games in the live stream that I'm not as good at, and I'll fail live. And you guys can experience that. So we'll fail at Batman Returns, we'll fail at the final driving stage, and you guys will see how difficult it really is. So we'll definitely try to do that sometime soon, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, be sure, as always, to post them down in the comments section below. Big shout out again to my current Patreon backers and super chatters. So thank you guys for continuing to support my channel. Anyone that's new here, feel free to subscribe. I've got a lot of Let's Plays on here, many, many more to come. And, if you enjoy what you saw here, definitely stay in touch. So, but yeah, to everyone else already subbed, thanks as usual for your continued support, and I guess until the next one, take it easy.